Welcome to a technical analysis of Butara Gambo, a naturally processed coffee from Ethiopia. If you're new here, my name's James. I run a coffee roastery called Blending Room based in Hull, East Yorkshire. And on a weekly basis, I release new coffees to my customers. And here on YouTube, I do a technical analysis of those releases. I discuss the roast profile, I do a tasting, and I try, where possible, to convey how I think this coffee would best perform brewed at home. This was brought to us by Omwani coffee importers. They're based in York, in Yorkshire, and that's not too far away from me, which I like. The trader, Dave Burton, put these in front of me. There was this and the Adado, which I've done a video about as well. And from the samples, I selected this coffee plus the Adado, and I'm also going to be teeing up some more for the future. This was the first consignment of Ethiopian coffee that Omwani had brought into the UK, and I was pretty excited to bring it in. Admittedly, I haven't drawn it out of warehousing as fast as I should have done. This is still a delightful coffee. I just should have brought it out sooner. However, the flavor profiles in this coffee are perfectly suited to the lovely weather that we are having at this point in time. So I think I pretty much lucked out there. I've been working with Omwani for a couple of years now, and I specifically purchase coffees from Burundi because it's an area that they do very well at, and it is an area that other importers that I use don't do quite so well. However, when Dave tapped me up about the coffees that they were bringing in from Ethiopia, I had to try them based on the quality of the coffees that they source from Burundi. So anyway, here we are, Butara Gambo, a naturally processed coffee from Ethiopia, and this is how I roasted it. Fortunately for this coffee, for me and you, my customers, this was my second natural processed coffee from Ethiopia that I roasted on our now 1-year-old Loring. So I had a little bit of roast data, a little bit of understanding about how the roaster and natural processed coffees from that region perform together in the roast environment. Specifically, I also had a little bit of understanding about what this consignment of natural processed coffees from Omwani also perform in the roaster. This is really useful information because natural processed coffees tend to be a little harder to roast, not because they have harder to access flavor profiles, but more that there are certain aspects of the roasting where heat absorbed by the coffee beans works in a very different way to those coffees that are washed and from other parts of the world. Specifically, around first crack, natural processed coffees love to race on in temperature. So if you're aiming for a light coloration and a lower end temperature than, say, a washed coffee, it is a little difficult to control that environment such that you arrive at your endpoint or desired endpoint. Now, I knew what was going to happen based on the Adado and the 5 or 6 batches that I roasted of that natural processed coffee from Ethiopia and Omwani. So when I approached the Butara Gambo, I had an idea about what I might need to avoid at certain points in the roast. This helped when I came to roast profile design. I knew that I wanted to apply the pyramid heat approach because I like the texture, the fruitiness, the clarity that that gives me in the cup. It's an emulation of drum roasting, which I enjoy. I like body in the cup, I like balance, so that's what I'm trying to achieve with this particular heat profile. I knew that as I was approaching first crack that I needed to have controlled the thermal momentum because at 203, 204 degrees Celsius in that Loring, the temperatures want to race away, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure that the end temperature didn't exceed, say, 215 degrees Celsius, and I wanted there to be enough development time, 1 minute and 20-ish seconds, so that I can create some balance in the cup, because a lot of my customers brew in a breadth of brew technologies at home. These coffees need to perform somewhat as an espresso, but also be expressive as a filter coffee. I haven't yet brought into the company coffees that are designed exactly for brew apparatus, espresso roast, filter roast. So these have to sit in the sort of no man's land of omni roasting. My target end color was going to be in the region of very light to extremely light, so I wanted an agtron of somewhere above 85 points, and that was the concept when I went into the first batch. And on the screen now you can see the roast profile that I will be using as my reference roast for all future batches. You'll note that the profile itself is a nice steady curve. The rate of rise curve is somewhat an ever declining slope. And what I mean by somewhat is there is a little bit of a hump in temperature circled here, and this degradation of temperature here could be a little steeper. I think that the plateauing there is an attempt for me in pulling the temperature away, but the coffee wanting to do the inverse. It wanted to race away in temperature. So I may need to be a touch more aggressive in the breaks applied by stripping energy from the roaster a little earlier on, as shown here in the gas inputs throughout the roast. Based on the cuppings, I may also shorten the development time as well. Naturally processed coffees have a lot of reducing sugars and can create a little bit of body inside of the cup. Maybe I could drop this coffee between 1:15 and 1:20 as a next exploration. I have to remind myself that on the Loring I am still exploring these coffees. I still don't understand natural processed coffees from this region. I don't understand a lot of coffees from anywhere in the world because many of them are going to be the first time that I have roasted them in the Loring. So where I can make tweaks, I would be better advantaged then as a roaster going forward. The total duration of this roast was 9 minutes and 19 seconds with a development time of 1 minute and 23, which is 14.8% of the total roast time. The end temperature was 214.1 degrees Celsius, and maybe I could try to attempt to drop this coffee a little earlier and shallower in temperature, somewhere around the 211 to 212. That might promote a little bit more fruitiness inside of the cup. I'll also do a roast color assessment now, just to convey exactly what the end color was, which is a very, very important thing when it comes to roast profile analysis, because color is flavor. It is how we measure our roasts as roasters. Of course, we have to taste everything, and taste is the most important measurement of the success of a roast. However, as we're trying to repeat this through time, we've got to have a reference, and color is a very important endpoint. So the Butara Gambo has come out at 101.3 on the Agtron Gourmet scale, which is extremely light in color. I don't often roast coffees past 100. This is an extremely light roast for me. So how does that number transfer into flavor? Well, let's taste. So like with all my assessments at the minute, I have brewed a batch filter brew. Many of my clients drink their coffee like this. It is my preferred method of brewing inside of the roastery. So therefore, I have a stoic reference point if I use this brew method at these assessments. Of course, I do cup all these coffees, and that's a great way to be able to build the flavor profiles that I can convey to you on the bags. However, this is brilliant as a real life interpretation of this coffee. So first and foremost, we have to dig our nose into the cup because aroma is such an important factor of olfactory assessment. So what do we smell? Ripe strawberries. Sweet, sticky, ripe strawberries with a smidge of caramel as well. As I mentioned earlier, this is incredibly befitting of this wonderful sunshine that we're having in the UK, and you get all of that inside of the cup. So let's see if that transfers into flavor. Which it does. So assessing the acidity and fruit composition, the first thing that you note is this lovely pithy Seville orange style of acidity. There's a play on bittersweet in there. It's wonderful and incredibly fresh. That then subsides into this ripe British strawberries, which is just such a wonderful time of the year. I don't know if any of you have ever gone and done pick your own strawberries, but that's what the aroma and flavor profile tastes like. So what about the body or the character of the cup? Well, what you pick up here is an interesting play on crisp and clean, but then a creamy, sticky finish. So there's this creamy caramel and almost a little bit of hazelnut that goes on, that's embedded in that pungent ripe strawberry that you get in the cup. It's wonderful. And then talking about the finish, it's all of those things on your palate. Caramel, creaminess, in comes that hazelnut. There's no chocolate at all. There's all fruits on your palate. It's wonderful, it's really complex, and it makes a stonking filter coffee. And with that statement, let's discuss how you could brew this coffee at home. This is a batch filter brew, and I think these coffees, these fruit-forward natural process coffees from this region, Ethiopia, are really well suited for this method of brewing. They're highly complex. Filter coffee allows clarity to be exposed inside of the cup. So I would wholeheartedly recommend that your first foray with this coffee would be as a filter brew. That be batch, Kalita Wave, Hario V60, Melita, any style of paper filtration, somewhat also metal filtration would work exceptionally with this coffee. Next, you could then play on the body that's in there. So a full immersion brew like a cafetiere would also be great. You won't get the top notes, but you really will emphasize the body, the sweetness, and that caramel stickiness on the end of the cup. If you're interested in espresso, there is a little bit of acidity going on with this in that Seville orange, so be mindful of that and make sure that you take that notion and apply it to a brew recipe. So start at 1 to 2.5 maybe. Be comfortable to increase the dilution just to mitigate that acidity, but expect then a very open, fruit-forward espresso. It would marry well with milk. You will get strawberries and cream in the cup, but make sure you use Gold Top from Jersey cows. That's good for you. Don't have any of the other rubbish. I think I'm going to have a Clever Dripper as my go-to at-home brew for this. I don't have a batch brewer at home, but I do have a Clever Dripper, and that will marry the wonderful world of immersion brewing and filtration. So if you haven't got a Clever Dripper, this is a great time for you to think about it. Here in the UK, through us, £25, it's a bargain, super delicious coffee afterwards. And that was Butara Gambo, a natural process coffee from Ethiopia brought to us here at Blending Room by Omwani coffee importers based in Yorkshire. It is a very fruit-forward coffee and would suit those people who enjoy that style of brew. Those who enjoy filtration brewing are going to get the most out of this. And it is really well suited to a wonderfully crisp, sunny day. And on that bombshell, I hope this video has proved useful to some. Do drop me a comment below if you want to explore any other aspect of this style of presentation. Do you want to lean more into the roast profile analysis? Do you want me to taste more analytically when it comes to the actual flavor profiling? Who knows? Let me know below. Anyway, if you pick up a bag, I hope you enjoy it. You have a lovely week ahead.